In the heart of the Karakum Desert, where no river dares to remain and no shadow stays long, there is a fire that was never meant to live. It has burned beneath the sand for generations, without altar, without prayer, without mercy. The elders say it is not a flame, but a gate, and every gate waits for a keeper. This is the legend of Turkmenistan, the gate where fire never sleeps. Chapter 1: The fire that should have died the night the desert stopped breathing. No one in the Karakum understood what they were hearing, because silence, when it arrives in a place of endless wind, sounds louder than any storm. Sand lay unmoving beneath the stars. The air did not shift. Even the fire at Darvaza, the great burning pit that had devoured darkness for generations, seemed to hesitate. Amun knew this before he saw it. He felt it in his teeth, in the dry ache behind his eyes, in the way his shadow clung too closely to his feet as he walked the rim of the crater. The fire below still burned, but it no longer roared. Its flames stood straighter than usual, pale instead of gold, as if remembering a shape they had once held. This fire was not supposed to exist. That was the first story every child learned. Long before Amun's grandfather was born, the ground had collapsed here, opening a wound into gas and heat that could not be sealed. The elders had tried to burn it out, to starve it, to bury it. Nothing worked. So they named it a gate and posted keepers not to worship it, but to watch. Fire that is seen, they believed, is less likely to walk. Amun was the youngest keeper ever chosen, not because he was special, but because he listened. In the desert, listening was survival. Wind warned, sand whispered. Fire, if you stood long enough near it, told you when to step back. Tonight, the fire told him nothing. It only watched him in return. He stopped at the iron marker, driven into the rock at the crater's edge. It was warm beneath his palm, warmer than it should have been, though the night air had grown cold. Amun frowned and looked down. The flames were withdrawing from the walls, pulling inward, as if the pit itself were inhaling. "That's not right," he murmured, though no one was near enough to hear. The desert answered with a sound he had never known, a low, hollow pressure, like breath trapped beneath stone. Amun stepped back. His training urged caution, but something older pulled at him, a sense that if he turned away now, something would follow. The fire shifted, its color paling further, until it was almost clear, heatless light rising from darkness. For the first time in living memory, the gate of fire did not warm the night. Then it spoke, not aloud, not in words shaped by air. The sound arrived inside him, fully formed, as if it had been waiting for space. His name was not called. Instead, it was remembered. Amun staggered, catching himself on the marker as the desert spun. Below, the fire bent not toward his body, but toward his shadow. Images pressed against his thoughts, sand covering stone towers, caravans vanishing without trace, a city swallowed not by time but by decision. He saw men sealing doors beneath the earth, heard oaths spoken in fear, felt heat buried alive. This was not prophecy, it was account. Amun gasped. "You should have died," he whispered, unsure whether he spoke to the fire or the memory inside it. The fire flickered once. Agreement was not offered. By dawn, the elders arrived. They came on foot and camel, wrapped against a wind that had returned too suddenly to be trusted. Amun stood where he had not moved all night, eyes rimmed red, voice hoarse as he told them what had changed. He described the silence, the pale flame, the way the heat had withdrawn. He did not describe the images. Some truths demanded a listener prepared to carry them. The eldest among them, Korkut, knelt at the crater's edge. He did not reach toward the fire. He did not pray. He only watched, his face tightening as the flame leaned, almost imperceptibly, in Amon's direction. "It is waking," Korkut said at last. "It's been burning for generations," another elder protested. "What difference is waking?" Korkut rose slowly. "Fire burns," he said. "A gate waits." A murmur passed through the group. Gates implied two sides, implied movement. Amon swallowed. "It spoke," he said quietly, "not in words, in remembering that silenced them." The elders withdrew to argue beneath the low tents, voices sharp with fear. They tried to hide behind tradition. Amon remained by the crater, the fire no longer silent but patient, as if it had time enough to spare. He felt watched, not judged, and that unsettled him more than anger would have. When the elders returned, their decision sat heavy in the air. "There are old paths beneath the sand," Korkut said. "Sealed paths. The fire remembers them. If it finishes remembering, it will open what was closed. And if we don't let it," Amon asked, "then it will choose another way," Korkut replied. "Fire always does." They told Amon what had been buried. A city beneath a blue-black dome of stone, built where earth and gas met, meant to harness heat and bind it. The city had failed not by collapse, but by choice. Its people had sealed themselves away, believing some flames were too dangerous to share. The gate was not an accident. It was a lock that had been burning itself open. "You were chosen because the fire did not reach for your hands," Korkut said. "It reached for what follows you." Amon looked at his shadow, long on the sand. It trembled, though he stood still. Enough to promise that the choice would not wait forever. Chapter 2. Beneath the Sand That Breathes. The elders had argued long into the morning, but argument did not bind fire, and it did not slow sand. When he turned his back on the crater, he felt the heat return behind him, not chasing, not urging, merely present, like a thought held in reserve. The desert ahead looked unchanged, yet each step confirmed what his body already knew. The Karakum was breathing again. He followed no marked road. Old paths here were remembered, not drawn. The sand bore subtle cues, darker ripple, where caravans once passed, a line of stones, half swallowed, yet aligned with stubborn intent. Amon walked as his grandfather had taught him, not straight, but listening, letting the ground suggest direction. By mid-morning, the wind rose, then fell away, leaving pockets of silence that pressed against his ears. In those hollows, the sand shifted on its own, a soft settling sound, like cloth being folded beneath the earth. The first sign appeared as a sink, no wider than a well, its rim hardened into glassy crust. Amon knelt and touched it, warm, not burning, but alive. He pressed his ear to the ground and heard a low, steady hum, a cadence beneath the dunes that matched the fire's withdrawn rhythm. This was not collapse. It was invitation. He marked the spot with a strip of cloth and moved on. The elders had spoken of sealed paths, plural. A gate rarely guarded a single door. By afternoon, the desert offered him a companion. It came as a mirage at first, an outline that refused to blur when he blinked. Then it resolved into a man leading a camel laden with waterskins and bundles of salt. The man's face was weathered into calm lines, his eyes sharp without hurry. He raised a hand in greeting and did not smile. "Firekeeper," the man said, not asking. "You walk like someone who expects the ground to answer." Amen nodded. "Salt carrier," he replied. "You move like someone who knows which questions not to ask." The man's mouth twitched. "Name's Yagmur. I cross when the sand allows it." He glanced back the way Amen had come. "The gate is restless. It's remembering," Amen said. Yagmur considered this, then shrugged. "Same thing, when it's old enough." He fell into step without ceremony. In the desert, company was accepted, like shade gratefully, without ownership. They walked through a field of low dunes, where the sand felt softer, almost spongy, underfoot. Yagmur halted and stamped. The surface shuddered, then stilled. "This wasn't here last season," he said. "Sand that gives is sand that's hiding something." Amen crouched, brushing aside the top layer. Beneath lay stone cut clean, its edge precise despite the years. A seam. He traced it until his fingers found a notch worn smooth by hands that had known urgency. Together, they cleared enough sand to reveal a narrow stair descending into darkness that breathed warm air upward in patient pulses. Yagmur spat to the side. "Paths beneath the desert," he said. "My grandmother warned me about these, said they lead to rooms where fire learns names." Amen did not answer. He had already felt the pull pressure behind the sternum, identical to the night at Darvaza. The fire was not below, but it was connected, threaded through the earth, like a thought through memory. They descended. The stair opened into a corridor, lined with brick, fused at the edges. The mortar vitrified, as if kissed by heat and then forgiven. The air smelled of minerals and old iron. Light came from nowhere and everywhere. A faint glow that revealed carvings along the walls, spirals that tightened into knots, symbols of containment repeated with obsessive care. This was not a city's underbelly. It was a design. Farther in, they found the first chamber. Its dome was low and ribbed, its floor etched with channels that converged on a central pit, now capped with stone. The cap bore scorch marks, arranged deliberately, not chaotic burns, but measured ones. Amen placed his palm on the stone. It answered with a tremor. Yagmur stepped back. "That's enough," he said. "I'm a carrier, not a keeper." "You don't have to touch," Amen replied. "Just witness." The stone cap shifted, not lifted, released. A seam opened and pale light rose, heatless yet insistent. Amen's shadow stretched across the chamber and then split, as if doubled, by a second source of illumination. Images pressed in again, engineers arguing over airflow, priests negotiating limits, elders sealing doors with vows that tasted like ash. The light dimmed, satisfied, and the stones slid back into place. Yagmur exhaled. "So," he said carefully, "they built a city to bind fire, and the fire learned the city. They built many rooms," Amen said, "each to hold a part, each to keep it from moving." "Nothing stays still forever," Yagmur replied. "Not sand, not men." They moved on, chamber after chamber, each revealing a piece of a system meant to last longer than courage. Some rooms were intact, others had cracked, their seals stressed by centuries of patient pressure. In one, Amen found a wall inscribed with names, hundreds of them scratched, shallow. then crossed through, then scratched again, remembered, unremembered, remembered once more. At the deepest point, they reached a vault whose door had not sealed properly. A narrow fissure leaked warmth, real warmth this time, enough to bead sweat on Amon's brow. He hesitated. "This one's different," Yagmur said. "This one wants out." Amon nodded. "And if it does," he said, "it won't come up alone." They retreated before the vault could decide for them. Back on the stair, the desert's breath felt cooler, kinder. As they emerged, the sun was low, turning the dunes into long shadows that seemed to lean toward the gate. Yagmur adjusted his load. "I'll tell the elders what I saw," he said. "They won't like it." "They don't have to," Amon replied. "They only have to choose." Yagmur paused. "And you?" Amen looked back at the seam now half buried again, already learning to forget. "I'll walk the rest of the paths," he said. "Before the fire finishes, remembering for us, that night, as they camped apart, but within sight, the sand hummed beneath Amon's sleep. He dreamed of doors opening, not outward, but inward, of a gate that learned how to close itself by letting something pass. When he woke, his shadow lay wrong beside him, shorter than it should have been, as if part of it had stayed behind. The desert breathing did not explain. Chapter 3: The City That Learned to Wait. By the third day, Amon understood that the desert was no longer merely breathing. It was timing itself. Wind arrived when it was useful, fell away when silence could do more harm. Heat pressed during the march and withdrew at rest, as if some vast attention were calibrating him step by step. Yagmur had turned south at dawn, carrying news to the elders, leaving Amon alone with the paths beneath the sand and the weight that followed him like a second shadow. He found the next entrance at noon. Not a seam this time, but a depression shaped too cleanly to be chance, its edges armored by fused stone. The sand here refused to settle, slipping back again and again to reveal a ring of carved markers, each one etched with the same symbol he had seen undergrounda, not tightening into itself. Amon stepped inside the ring. The air cooled. His breath fogged, then steadied. He waited. The ground opened without noise. A ramp descended into a space that smelled of old rain and metal. Amon followed it down into a corridor wider than the others, its walls tiled in blue-black glaze, dulled by age. The tiles caught the light in a way that made the passage seem deeper than it was, a trick of perspective meant to calm those who entered. He recognized the intent. Whoever built this had believed fear was a variable that could be managed. The corridor ended at an archway. Beyond it lay a city that had not collapsed. Streets stretched outward in deliberate geometry, their stones worn smooth by feet that had known where they were going. Low buildings clustered around vents cut into the ground, each vent ringed with symbols of control. Domes rose where markets might have been, their interiors dark but intact. No sand had invaded here. The city had been sealed not against time, but against forgetting. Amon took a step forward. The sound of his footfall traveled farther than it should have, returning to him softened, as if absorbed by memory before echo could form. He felt watched, not by eyes, but by arrangements. This place knew its purpose. He moved through a square where a fountain once ran. The basin was dry, its channels stained with mineral deposits. At the center stood a pillar of stone, capped with a disc of metal, etched thin, with lines like veins. Amon placed his palm against it. Warmth answered, steady and restrained. "Welcome," said a voice behind him. Amon turned. A man stood at the edge of the square, wrapped in layered cloth the color of dusk. His beard was trimmed short, his posture unguarded. He did not look surprised to see Amon. He looked relieved. I wondered when the gate would send someone who listens. The man continued. My name is Arslan. I keep what remains. You're alive, Amon said. Define alive, Arslan replied, smiling faintly. I breathe, I remember, I wait. They walked together. Arslan spoke without prompting, as if the city itself had been holding its breath for an audience. He explained that this place had been the final designer city built to house decision. Fire flowed beneath it through channels measured to the handspan. Heat was harvested, not worshipped. Movement was allowed, but guided. The gate above was never meant to be permanent. It was a warning flare, a sign that the lock still held. Why seal yourselves away? Amon asked. Because we learned too late, Arslan said, that sharing fire changes who gets to decide. We thought containment was mercy. They stopped at a hall whose doors stood open. Inside, benches circled a shallow pit sealed by layered grates. The grates glowed faintly, their light pulsing in a slow cadence that matched Amon's own breath. This is where the arguments ended, Arslan said, not with consensus. With exhaustion, Amon felt the pressure again, the inward pull. The fire is remembering, he said. It's reopening rooms. Arslan nodded. Then time has caught us. He looked at Amon closely. Tell me when it leans toward you. Does it seek your hands? No, Amon said. It seeks what follows me. Arslan's eyes flicked to Amon's shadow, which lay too still on the stone. Then it has learned restraint, he said softly. That is worse. They walked the upper terraces as the city's light shifted, not with the sun, but with internal rhythms. In workshops, tools lay ready, as if set down mid-thought. In a schoolroom, slate boards bore diagrams half erased. Amon felt the city's patience like a held note. It had not died. It had learned to wait. At the city's heart, beneath a dome painted the color of deep water, stood a door without handle or hinge. The metal was smooth, unmarred by heat. Amon knew, without touching it, that this was the last seal. What's behind it? He asked. Arslan did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. Choice, he said, undiluted. If opened, the fire will no longer be partitioned. It will move as it did before we taught it our names, and if it stays closed, then the gate above will widen, Arslan replied. Fire does not like being told no forever. Silence settled between them. Amon felt the weight of paths he had yet to walk, rooms he had yet to witness. He felt the elder's fear, Yagamor's practicality, the desert's breath, counting seconds no one else heard. I won't open it, Amon said at last. Not yet. Arslan inclined his head. Then you understand us. I understand limits, Amon replied. And what happens when they're mistaken for solutions? As they left the dome, the city's light dimmed a fraction, as if acknowledging the decision without approving it. Amon retraced his steps toward the ramp. At the threshold, he paused. You're not coming? He asked. Arslan shook his head. I am what remains, he said. Someone must remember how to wait. Amon ascended alone. When he emerged into the desert, dusk had painted the dunes violet and gold. The gate burned in the distance, brighter now, its flame bending ever so slightly toward him. He felt his shadow lengthen, then thin, as if deciding how much of itself to follow. He turned toward the next path. The city behind him did not close. It listened. Chapter 4. The keeper who stayed behind Amen did not return to the surface the way he had come. The ramp that had guided him out of the waiting city narrowed behind him, its blue-black tiles dulling to bare stone, then to packed earth. By the time he realized the passage had changed, the desert air was no longer above him, it was behind him, sealed off by weight and intention. The city had not trapped him, it had redirected him. The tunnel bent downward, not sharply, but with the subtle insistence of gravity that had learned patience. Amen walked on, counting his steps, until counting no longer mattered. The air cooled. The warmth that had once pulsed through the walls thinned, stretched, then resolved into a new sensation, something like presence without heat, attention without touch. He emerged into a chamber, smaller than the city's halls, but older in spirit. The walls here were rough, unfinished, scored by hands that had worked quickly. At its center stood a low plinth bearing a single object, a mask of hammered bronze, darkened by age, its surface etched with lines that converged at the eyes. Amen stopped. He had seen this symbol before, not on walls, not in chambers, but in the elders' silences, the mask of the first keeper. "You've come further than most," said a voice, steady and near. Amen turned. An old man sat against the far wall, legs folded, hands resting easily on his knees. His robe was threadbare, its color long surrendered to dust. His eyes were clear. "I wondered if the city would finally let someone through," the man continued. "It never trusted endings." "You're alive," Amen said again, the words familiar now. The man smiled. "I am what happens when a keeper refuses to leave." They spoke without urgency. The man's name was Bashir. He had been chosen generations ago, when the gate first learned to burn in one place. He had walked the paths, witnessed the chambers, stood before the final door. He had decided, as Amen had, not to open it. But someone had to stay. Bashir said simply, "A gate watched only from above grows impatient." He gestured to the mask that was meant to be worn, a way to bind the keeper to the fire's attention. "I never put it on." "Why not?" Amen asked. "Because masks teach fire to speak to faces," Bashir replied. "And faces learn to answer." Amen understood more than he liked. He felt the fire's pull even here, attenuated but persistent, like a thought tapping at the back of the mind. "The fire is remembering faster," he said. "Rooms are reopening." Bashir nodded. "Then the city's waiting has reached its limit." They sat together in the chamber while time passed in small, unremarkable increments. Bashir spoke of the early days, when people believed control was a skill that could be perfected. Of the first arguments that turned into designs, the designs into seals, the seals into oaths. "We didn't fail because we were cruel," he said. "We failed because we were thorough." Amen listened. The chamber's walls seemed to lean closer, not threatening, but intent on hearing. "You don't plan to stay," Bashir said at last. "No," Amen replied. "I plan to finish walking." Bashir studied him. "Then you need to know what waiting costs." He rose with effort and crossed to the plinth. He lifted the bronze mask and turned it so Amen could see the inside. The metal there was worn smooth in places, rough in others, as if something had pressed and withdrawn again and again. "The fire learned patience from us," Bashir said. "It learned to lean, not grasp, to ask, not take. That makes it dangerous in a new way." "What does it want?" Amen asked. Bashir met his gaze. "Not freedom," he said. "Witness. Enough of it, shared widely enough, that no single keeper can say yes or no alone." Amen felt the weight of that settle. A gate that asked many could open without permission. Bashir returned the mask to the plinth. When you go back up, he said, the elders will argue. Some will want to open paths to vent the pressure. Others will want to seal everything tighter. Both will be wrong. And you? Amun asked. I will stay, Bashir said. Not to guard the door, but to remind the fire that waiting once had a face. They clasped forearms, a keeper's farewell, without ceremony. Amun turned toward the exit. Bashir indicated a narrow passage angling upward, its air warmer, more familiar. As he climbed, he felt the shift again. His shadow lengthened ahead of him, then slipped sideways, lagging by a heartbeat. He stopped. The shadow did not. Amun, said a voice that was not Bashir's. It came from the shadow itself, calm and exact. Amun closed his eyes, breathed, then opened them again. You're learning, he said quietly. The shadow did not deny it. He emerged into night, near the edge of the gate's glow. The fire burned brighter now, its color deepening toward gold, warmth returning in cautious increments. Figures moved at the perimeter, elders, carriers, watchers drawn by rumor and unease. Yagmur was among them, his posture tight with relief when he saw Amun. You were gone too long, Yagmur said. I was exactly long enough, Amun replied. The elders gathered, questions pressed forward, urgent and overlapping. Amun raised a hand. The fire leaned, listening. There is a city beneath us, he said. It waits. There is a keeper who stayed behind, so the rest of us could leave. The fire is not a monster, but it is no longer content with one voice. What do you propose? Korkut asked. Amun looked at the gate, then at the people, then at the desert that breathed around them. We stop pretending there is a final seal, he said. We open paths that teach, not vents that release. We share witness, and we accept that some things will still burn. The fire flared once, in acknowledgement, an approval. Amun felt his shadow settle back into place, thinner now, quieter. The desert exhaled. Somewhere below, Bashir waited. Somewhere beneath that the city listened. And the gate, awake and patient, did not sleep. Chapter 5. When witness becomes weight, the elders did not disperse after Amun spoke. They drew closer, not to him, but to one another, forming a ring that shifted and tightened as voices rose and fell. The gate burned steadily behind them, its warmth returning in cautious layers, enough to thaw fingers, but not enough to soften fear. Amun stood at the edge of the circle and listened. He had learned that decisions like fire changed shape when watched too closely. By dawn, the desert had filled with people. Carriers halted their routes. Herds were turned aside. Watchers climbed low ridges to see the flame with their own eyes. Word moved faster than sand ever could. The gate was no longer content, and a keeper had gone beneath the earth and returned unchanged almost. Almost was enough. Korkut called for silence. Witness will be shared, he said, repeating Amun's words as if testing their weight. But how? Amun answered by walking. He led them away from the crater, along a line the sand resisted and then yielded toward the first seam he had marked days before. The cloth strip still fluttered there, dusted but intact. He knelt, brushed the surface, and revealed the glassed rim again. This is one path, he said. There are others. We will not open them all. We will open them together. They descended in small groups. Not everyone. Never everyone. Inside the chamber, Amun showed them the sealed pit, the scorched geometry, the way the light answered presence without heat. Some wept, others recoiled. One man laughed too loudly and left. The fire did not follow him. By midday, a pattern formed. Those who entered came back quieter. Their arguments lost edge, gained shape. Stories surfaced, old ones, spoken once and set aside because they were inconvenient. A caravan rerouted. A winter ration miscounted. A door closed to protect a few that condemned many. Witness did not accuse, it arranged. Not all welcomed it. At the gate, a faction gathered that nightmen and women who believed containment had been mercy, that opening paths invited disaster. They spoke of pressure and risk, of fires that ran and could not be called back. "You're teaching it to spread," one said to Amen. "You're teaching it to move." "I'm teaching us to see," Amen replied. "Fire moves whether we name it or not." The argument sharpened. Hands clenched. The gate leaned, attentive. Aman felt his shadow thin again, as if drawn forward by the heat of contention. He raised his voice, not loud, but steady. "Tomorrow," he said, "we walk the second path." The second path lay farther east, where dunes rose higher and the sand held its breath longer. The entrance was narrower, the descent steeper. This chamber was different, colder, rougher. Its seals were imperfect, its symbols layered over one another, as if revised mid-thought. When the light rose here, it carried warmth, gentle, persuasive. A woman stepped forward without being asked. She had lost a son to a storm rerouted by a decision no one claimed. The light did not show her his face. It showed her the meeting where the choice had been made. The room exhaled with her. When she emerged, her grief had not lessened, it had focused. By evening, the faction at the gate had thinned. Some joined the walks, some left. A few remained, eyes fixed on the flame as if daring it to misstep. That night, Amen dreamed of Bashir, not the man, but the act of staying. He woke with the taste of metal on his tongue, and the certainty that waiting too had consequences. On the third day, the fire changed color. It was subtle and amber, deepening toward white at the core. Heat increased by degrees no one could name, but everyone felt. Children laughed too close and were pulled back. Elders adjusted their cloaks. The gate was learning from the numbers, from the shared attention. Witness was weight. Amen climbed the rim alone at dusk. He stood where the iron marker still warmed his palm and spoke without ceremony. "You are not alone anymore," he said. "Neither are we." The fire did not answer. It leaned the way it always had. Below him, the desert breathed in and held. When the exhale came, it came from the east. A tremor rippled the dunes, not collapse, not quake, but alignment. Far off, a low glow surfaced and steadied, answering the gate like a mirror held at a distance. A third path had awakened itself. Amen closed his eyes. He felt the decision forming, heavy and shared. If they walked this path, the city beneath the sand would no longer be the only place that waited. He turned back toward the people gathering, toward Yagmar's practical gaze and Korkut's measured calm, toward fear that had learned to listen. "Tomorrow," he said, "we decide how many gates a desert can hold." The fire warmed the night just enough to be honest. Chapter 6. The third flame's question. The glow to the east did not fade with night. It steadied, patient as a held breath, casting a low halo against the dunes that made the desert seem closer to itself. Amen watched it from the rim until the stars thinned and the horizon bruised into morning. He did not announce the decision. He let the light do it. By dawn, people were already packing water, salt and cloth, moving with the economy of those who understood that delay was a choice with a cost. They set out in measured numbers. Witness had taught them restraint. Korkut walked at the front with 2 elders. Yagmur ranged wide to read the sand, and Amun kept the center, where the fire's pull balanced with the desert's breath. No banners, no chants, just footsteps placed where the ground allowed them. As they approached, the light resolved into a shallow depression ringed with fused stone, newer than the others, less deliberate. The sand here hummed audibly, a soft chord that wavered as if awaiting harmony. Amun knelt and pressed his palm to the rim. Warmth answered, fuller than before, and with it a sensation he had not felt yet, hesitation. "This one is undecided," Korkut said. "Yes," Amun replied, "and it's asking." They descended into a chamber that felt unfinished. The walls were rough, symbols sketched and scratched rather than carved. Channels converged toward a central basin that lay open, unsealed. Pale light hovered above it, wavering, warming. And when Amun stepped closer, it did not lean. It held. A voice rose not inside him this time, but in the space itself, layered and incomplete. Not a demand, a question. "If you are many, who decides?" No one answered at first. The chamber seemed to accept the silence, letting it stretch until it became something like an edge. A man stepped forward, the one who had argued loudest against opening paths. His jaw was set, his hands steady. "We decide," he said, "together." The light pulsed, uncertain. The sand hummed off-key. "That's not enough," said the woman who had walked the second path. "Together, how?" Arguments gathered shape. Some spoke of councils, others of rotation, others of thresholds no one person could cross alone. The chamber listened without preference. Amun watched the fire, learned from the contours of disagreement, from pauses and concessions. Witness here was not weight, it was structure. At last, Amun raised a hand. "The city beneath us waited because it had to," he said. "This flame hesitates because it can. We will not open it today." A ripple passed through the group, relief for some, frustration for others. The light steadied, warmer now, almost grateful. "What then?" Yagmur asked. "We mark it," Amun said. "We return. We teach ourselves how to answer." They sealed nothing. They placed stones in a ring, aligned not to contain, but to remember the shape of the question. As they climbed back into the desert, the glow dimmed but did not vanish. It waited. The gate at Darvaza burned differently when they returned, no brighter, but deeper, its warmth more even. Amun felt his shadow settle, no longer tugged thin by contention. The elders gathered and spoke with care, drafting a way forward that favored time over speed, witness over release. That night, Amun dreamed of doors that opened inward only when enough hands rested on the frame. He woke to a desert breathing steadily, a fire that watched without leaning, and the knowledge that learning to decide would take longer than learning to open. At dawn, Korkut found him at the rim. "You've given the fire a new habit," he said. Amun shook his head. "It gave it to us." Far to the east, the third glow answered the sun and held. Chapter 7. When the fire refuses a name. The council's words traveled slower than sand, but they traveled. By the time the third glow had settled into its waiting, caravans were already altering their routes, skirting the marked ring as one might a sleeping animal whose dreams were unknown. Rumor sharpened the distance. Some said the flame would choose a single voice and scorch the rest. Others swore it had already judged them all and was merely patient enough to let the verdict ripen. Amun listened, and said little. He felt a change in the fire at Darvaza, not in heat or height, but in posture. It no longer mirrored the camp's mood. It watched with a reserve that unsettled him, as if it had learned that attention did not require agreement. On the 7th night after the council, the refusal came. It began as a thinning. The flame narrowed, drew itself upright, and shed its colors until it stood almost colorless, a clear column that bent light rather than casting it. Those keeping watch stepped back. Even the wind found no purchase. The desert held. Korkut arrived without ceremony. "It won't answer names," he said. He had tried them, all the old invocations, the practical titles, the newly agreed forms that carried no authority but intention. The fire had remained unmoved. Amun approached the rim. He did not speak. He felt the familiar pull fail to arrive. In its place was an absence that was not cold, not empty, an absence shaped like restraint. "It's refusing," Yagmur said from behind him, "or teaching us how." They debated the meaning until the words lost their edges. The elders proposed an experiment, a naming without claim, a sound offered and withdrawn in the same breath. Amun shook his head. "Names are tools," he said. "This isn't a tool." "What is it then?" someone demanded. Amun looked into the column. "A boundary." They agreed on a soy to send a small group to the third site again, not to open, not to argue, but to observe the relationship between the two flames. If the mountain could remember, perhaps the desert could refuse. The journey would test whether restraint traveled as well as fire. They left before dawn. The desert was quieter than Amun had known it, its usual chorus of small movements subdued. At the marked ring, the pale glow rose as before. But when Amun stepped close, it did something new. It leaned away. Soraya would have named that wisdom, Amun thought, had she been there. He circled slowly, keeping his hands open. The glow tracked his movement without advancing, its warmth steady but withheld. Korkut knelt at the stones. "It's learned distance, or it's learned us," Amun replied. They placed no offerings. They spoke no decisions. They sat and watched the light adjust to their breathing, to the long pause between words. After an hour, the glow lifted a fraction higher and steadied, a response not to command, but to patience. When they returned to Darvasa at dusk, the gate had changed again. The colorless column had widened slightly, admitting a faint spectrum at its core. Not a name, but an allowance. That night, Amun dreamed of a fire that burned only where it was not named, a map whose blank spaces were the safest roads. He woke with his chest unburdened and a clarity that did not ask for certainty. At first light, the council gathered. Amun spoke once. "We will stop naming what we cannot carry," he said. "We will stop opening what we cannot close. And we will accept that some fires are not ours to keep, only to keep us from forgetting." No one objected. The refusal had done its work. As the sun climbed, the flame at Darvaza held its breath and settled into a quiet burn, neither claiming nor yielding. Far away, the third glow dimmed just enough to be missed by those not looking. Amun turned from the rim. The desert resumed its small sounds. Paths remained paths, and between them, a boundary had learned how to stand. Chapter 8: The Weight of What Is Not Burned After the Refusal. Time resumed its ordinary gait, but altered, like a caravan that has learned a different rhythm after losing a camel. The fires did not diminish, they did not grow. They endured, and endurance proved heavier than spectacle. The council dispersed its authority without announcing the act. Edicts were replaced by intervals. Decisions arrived late and left early. Amun noticed that people spoke less about outcomes and more about thresholds, how far to go, when to stop, what to leave untouched. The language of control thinned. The language of care, awkward and imprecise, took its place. At Darvaza, the flame accepted fuel only when it was offered without expectation. Wood burned, oil burned, pride did not. When a trader tried to coax the fire higher for luck before a journey, it guttered and forced him to relight it with shaking hands. When a child dropped a crust into the pit without ceremony, the flame leaned, warmed, and held. "Is it judging us?" Yagmur asked one evening as they watched the light breathe. "No," Amun said. "It's clarifying us." A messenger arrived from the western salt flats with news that unsettled the camp. One of the minor Glozan afterflame, weak and unreliable, had gone out entirely. No wind had scattered it, no rain had quenched it. It had simply ceased. Fear rippled, quick and sharp. Extinguishment had a taste people recognized. Amun felt something else, relief edged with grief. "Not every fire is meant to last," he said, but the words landed poorly. People wanted permanence to answer for loss. They sent a small party to witness the sight. Amun insisted on going himself. If restraint had learned to travel, absence might have lessons too. The flats stretched white and unyielding. At the reported place, they found a circle of darkened earth and nothing more. No heat, no ash. Even the stones seemed ordinary again. Korkat pressed his palm to the ground and shook his head. "It didn't die," he said quietly. "It finished." Amun knelt. He felt no pull, no answering pressure in his chest. Instead, a weight settled behind his eyes, a sense of completion without satisfaction, the kind that asked to be carried, not celebrated. They returned with little to report. The council argued briefly, then stopped. The absence had spoken plainly enough. That night, the dream came again, different this time. Amun stood between the mountain and the desert, holding nothing. Paths appeared where he did not look. Fires burned behind him, ahead of him, but none in his hands. He woke with the conviction that stewardship was not accumulation, it was timing. At dawn, he went to Darvaza alone. He fed the flame just enough to keep it honest. Then he did something no keeper had done before. He removed a ring of stones, widening the pit's edge, letting heat escape into the air. Yagamor found him there. "You're loosening it," she said. "I'm giving it room," Amun replied, "to leave if it needs to." The flame responded, not by shrinking, but by softening. Its edges blurred. The pit no longer felt like a mouth, but a hearth open on one side. Word spread, slowly this time. People came and stood at a distance. Some disapproved, others felt a strange calm. Caravans paused and shared water without bargaining. Arguments ended earlier, not because agreement was reached, but because exhaustion arrived before harm. By evening, a wind rose from the north. It tested the pit, teased the flame. Amun watched without interference. The fire bent, steadied, and then almost politely lowered itself, not extinguished, reduced, right-sized. Amun exhaled a breath he had been holding since the mountain. He understood then the final burden of memory, knowing when to let a thing become smaller without calling it a loss. As night settled, the desert took back its stars. The fires marked the ground modestly now, no longer insisting on their importance. Amun turned away. confident for the first time that the story did not require his vigilance to continue. Somewhere beyond sight, another glow would one day finish. Somewhere else, one would begin. Between them, people would learn slowly, imperfectly, how to walk without carrying the flame everywhere they went. Chapter 9. The silence that chooses night descended more slowly than it should have, as if the world itself were deciding whether darkness still deserved a place. The campfires burned low, breaking into scattered embers, and no one spoke. Silence was no longer the absence of sound. It had weight now. It sat among them, listening. The chosen woke before the wind shifted, not from a dream, but from a familiar sensation being summoned without a voice. His heart beat steady and restrained, like something awaiting permission. The eastern sky remained dark, yet the stars there were fading not for dawn, but because something else was taking their place. He stepped out of the tent, higher on the slope, where bare rock pierced the snow like ancient bone. A pocket of darkness lay thicker than the rest of the night. It did not move. It did not breathe. It was a silence carved out of the world. One by one, the others woke. No one called out. No one needed to. They simply knew, like birds falling quiet when a hunter passes overhead without yet striking. It has arrived, someone whispered. It was not prophecy. It was confirmation. No ritual objects. None of those had meaning here. The darkness opened as they drew near, not by shifting, but by allowing. Inside was no measurable depth, not a cave, not a chasm, a place where sound refused to exist. Even breath became cautious. At the center, there was something. No one named it. Names would reduce it. It did not glow. It gave no warmth, yet everyone felt it. This was where avoided decisions had gathered not as memories, but as consequences. The chosen stepped forward. Each step carried the weight of a winter. His mind held no visions, no whispers, only questions, never asked at the moment they mattered. Choices postponed until later became never. The presence reacted, not with light, but with withdrawal. The space around it contracted, forcing him to face not what was there, but what was missing. A voice emerged, not from the air, from within his chest. You believe you were called to repair what was broken. He waited before answering. This was not a question for reflex. No, he said finally. I was called to accept what cannot be repaired. The silence thickened. Those behind him felt pressure in their ears, their bones. Some sank to their knees, not in fear, but in understanding. Certain burdens are permitted to rest on only one spine. The presence trembled, not in anger, in deliberation. Then you know the cost, the voice said. I know, he answered. But I do not know if I can pay it for the first time. Something like warmth appeared, not comfort, but recognition from something that does not need approval. The darkness closed, not by vanishing, but by leaving a mark. A new fracture split the stone thin, precise, deep. No one touched it. No one asked what it meant. When they returned to the camp, the sky began to change. Dawn arrived late, but it arrived whole. No one spoke. They understood now. The story no longer asked what had happened, but who would live with it. And that was always the most difficult chapter. Chapter 10. The fire that refuses to end morning came without color. The sky over the Pamir did not brighten so much as thin, as if light itself were rationed at altitude. Frost clung to every surface, but it no longer sparkled. It dulled, carrying the same muted tone the world had taken since silence chose its bearer. The chosen stood apart from the camp, facing the fracture left in the stone. In daylight, it looked smaller, unimpressive, even a narrow scar no wider than a finger, running down the rock face and disappearing beneath the snow. Yet he could feel it still, a pressure behind the eyes, a low ache that had nothing to do with cold. Some wounds did not bleed, they endured. Behind him, the others moved carefully, speaking in half-voices. They packed without ceremony. No songs were sung. Even the animals sensed restraint. The horses shifted, but did not neigh, as if sound itself might disturb something that had not finished deciding. An elder approached him, steps slow, deliberate. This one had not spoken since the night before. His beard was white, not from age alone, but from decades of mountain wind. "It marked you," the elder said, not accusing, not reverent, observational. "Yes," the chosen replied. "Does it still burn?" He considered the question. "It does not burn," he said. "It persists." The elder nodded once. "Then, it is more dangerous than flame." They began the descent before the sun reached its highest point. Paths that once felt familiar now seemed to hesitate beneath their feet. Snow shifted unpredictably. Stone loosened where it should have held. It was not sabotage, it was adjustment. The mountain was recalibrating after remembering too much. By midday, they reached the old fire basin near the pass, the one abandoned long before memory became inconvenient. Its stones were rimed with ice, cracked but intact. Someone had tried to relight it during the night. The attempt had failed. Ash lay untouched in the basin. The chosen stopped. "This place matters," he said. "It used to," someone replied. "It still does," he corrected. "We simply stopped listening." He knelt and brushed snow from the stone rim. His hands trembled not from cold, but from proximity. Beneath the ash, the rock was warm, not hot, aware. The others backed away instinctively. No one argued. When the mountain remembers fire, distance is a form of respect. He placed his palm flat against the basin. This time, the fire answered immediately. Not as flame, but as resistance or refusal to fade, a refusal to be consumed. He saw no visions. Instead, he felt duration, the weight of something that had burned long enough to know it would outlast those who feared it. A voice spoke, not accusing, not commanding. "You would let it continue." "Yes," he said, but not unchecked. Silence followed. Not the choosing silence of the night before, but a listening one. "What will you give it?" the presence asked. He did not answer at once. This was the cost he had delayed. He looked at the others, their faces weathered, cautious, hopeful, in ways they did not name. They wanted resolution. Mountains rarely offered that. "I will give it limits," he said. "Paths, places, witnesses. I will not let it spread unseen. And if it demands more, then it will demand from me." The warmth intensified. Stone beneath his hand vibrated faintly, like breath rediscovered. A thin line of fire appeared in the basin, not rising, not flickering, lying there calm and narrow. It gave no smoke. It did not reach for air. The others exhaled as one, though none realized they had been holding breath. By the time they resumed the descent, word had already begun to move ahead of them. Mountains carried news differently, not by speed, but by inevitability. In villages below, old men would wake uneasy, shrines would be checked, fires would be watched more closely than usual. That night, they camped near the edge of the valley. Ordinary flames burned, again cooking fires, warming fires, protective fires. But none of them felt ordinary anymore. The chosen sat apart, the mountain's fracture still echoing faintly in his bones. Soraya joined him without asking. She had done so often enough that silence had learned to tolerate her. "You've changed the way it burns," she said. "No," he replied. "I've changed the way we stand near it." She studied the stars, sparse and sharp. "People will want to use it. They always do. And you?" He did not answer immediately. Fire did not care for ambition, but memory did. "I will stay," he said at last. "As long as it takes." Soraya smiled, not kindly, not sadly, understandingly. Then the mountain chose well. Above them, the Pamir peaks loomed unchanged, unsoftened. Somewhere deep within them, fire endured, no longer forgotten, no longer free. And that balance tenuous, living, was the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 11. The weight of what remains. The first snowfall came early. It did not announce itself with storm or thunder, but with a steady, deliberate descent, as if the sky were correcting something it had long delayed. Flakes settled into the fractures of stone, into the footprints left by the descent, into the narrow places where warmth had begun to matter again. The valley received the snow without celebration. Fires were tended more carefully now, not larger, not brighter, simply watched. People learned to sit with their backs straight, eyes lifted, as if flame were no longer a servant, but a presence that required acknowledgement. Children were warned, not with fear, but with gravity. "Do not turn away," they were told. "Do not stare. Learn the difference." The chosen did not return to the shrine. He remained between places, neither fully among the elders, nor withdrawn into the heights, a boundary like the one he had agreed to become. Each morning he walked the edge of the valley, feeling for imbalance, the way a healer feels for fever. Some days there was nothing. Other days the air resisted him, thickened, pulled. Memory was not finished. It never was. The first true test came with the shepherd from the western slope. His flock had refused the lower pasture, clustering instead near a collapsed ravine long avoided. When the man followed, he found heat bleeding through the stone, faint but undeniable. No flame, just warmth where none belonged. The chosen went alone. He knelt at the ravine's edge and listened. The mountain did not whisper names this time. It offered something heavier, regret without guilt, a sense of events that had not been cruel, merely unfinished. He understood then fire was not only consequence, it was continuity. He marked the place with stones, precise and intentional. A boundary, not to trap the fire, but to tell it where it could remain without devouring more than it should. When he returned, the elders waited. "You cannot do this everywhere," one said. "I know," he replied. "Then what happens when you fail?" He met their eyes. "Then the mountain will remember without me." The answer unsettled them more than any warning could have. That night, Soraya brought news from the upper pass. Travelers spoke of a glow seen beneath snow, far from any shrine. Not bright, not spreading, waiting. "People will come," she said. "Curiosity always arrives before wisdom." "Yes," he agreed. "That is why limits matter. But limits require force. Not always," he said. "Sometimes they require endurance." The wind rose after midnight, carrying grit and ice. It pressed against the tents, tested knots, worried at stakes. The chosen stood outside, letting it pass over him. He felt the fire stirred, not threatening, a reminder. The mountain had not chosen him to act, it had chosen him to remain. At dawn, the snow stopped. The world emerged sharper, cleaner, but no lighter. In the distance, the peaks caught the sun, their faces calm, almost indifferent. They had given what warning they intended to give. The chosen turned toward the higher paths again, knowing now that ascent was not a journey but a condition. Some burdens did not move forward, they stayed where they were most needed. Behind him, the valley breathed, fires burned, memory waited, and the mountain watched, not to judge, but to see whether what had been remembered would finally be carried well. Chapter 12. The mountain that remembers fire. The winter did not break the way winters were supposed to. There was no sudden softening of air, no dramatic retreat of snow. Instead, the cold loosened its hold, slowly, reluctantly, as if the land itself were deciding how much it was willing to release. Ice cracked in thin, precise lines. Streams did not rush. They tested their paths before committing. The mountain was learning restraint. The chosen felt the change before anyone spoke of it. It came not as warmth, but as less resistance, as subtle easing in the bones, in the breath. Fire remained where it had been marked. It did not spread. It did not demand. It endured within the limits drawn for it. That endurance was the true ending of the trial. The elders gathered at the old fire basin one last time. Snow ringed the stones, but the basin itself was clear, bare rock, holding a line of flame no longer than a forearm. It burned without smoke, without hunger. Those who stood near it felt neither comfort nor fearingly awareness. This is what remains, Elder Ferid said. Not power, not punishment, responsibility, another answered. The chosen said nothing. He no longer needed to. When the elders departed, they did not seal the place or hide it. They left it open to sky and weather. Memory that is locked away rots. Memory that is watched survives. Soraya lingered. So this is how it ends, she said. No, he replied. This is how it stays. She smiled, then turned toward the paths, toward roads that still needed stories. Some people carried memory by moving, others by standing still. The mountain chose both. Years passed, not counted, but layered. Children grew without knowing a world where fire was ignored. They were taught to see it, not as tool or threat, but as record. When storms came early, they asked why. When paths failed, they listened before rebuilding. Forgetting became harder. Not impossible, but costly. The chosen aged quietly, his hair silvered, his steps slowed. Yet the fracture in the stone never deepened, never closed. It remained as it had been. The night silence chose him a mark, not a wound. On the last morning, he climbed alone. The ascent was slower now, not from weakness, but from care. At the shelf, the wind did not rise. The basin's fire burned low and steady, as it always had since being bound to place and witness. He sat beside it. There were no visions, no voices. Memory did not need spectacle at the end. He placed his palm near the flame knot into it that had never been required. The warmth reached him this time. Not warning, not demand, recognition. You will be remembered. The mountain seemed to say not to him, but through him. He smiled once, faintly. When he did not descend, no alarm was raised. Some endings announce themselves. Others simply remain where they belong. The mountain kept its fire, the valley kept its balance, and the world continued, not lighter, not safer, but aware. That was enough. End of epic.